A storm gathered over Grenada's coast, but this time it wasn't in the sky. It brewed inside Sandrine's chest. She had spent the entire night pacing the edge of the cove, the waves crashing like gunshots, each one echoing her internal chaos. Ayo hadn't come after her. He hadn't written, he hadn't explained, but worst of all, he hadn't denied Tanya's letter. By sunrise, Sandrine was determined to leave the retreat early. She packed her things, but the front desk attendant informed her the boats wouldn't return for another 2 days due to an incoming weather system. She was trapped in paradise with a man who seduced her with ink and then spilled her trust like cheap wine. When she returned to her room, a letter sat beneath her pillow, again, always under her pillow like a curse. Sandrine, I don't deserve you, that's never been a question, but I need you to understand, every word I wrote you was real, even if the mouth that kissed you had kissed others before. You are not a story, you're the ending I never thought I'd write. Ayo. She wanted to rip it, burn it, scream. Instead, she went to confront him, but room 3 was empty, completely. No clothes, no journal, no scent of sandalwood, no trace he'd ever been there. She checked the writing hut, the cliffs, the grove, the old chapel. Nothing. By dusk, rumors spread like wildfire through the retreat. Ayo's gone, someone whispered. Vanished. Left without checking out, another said. He swam out into the ocean and never came back. He ran off with Amaka. Maybe she killed him. Sandrine felt the walls of her mind close in. She didn't know what was worse, the idea that he'd left her again, or the growing suspicion that something darker had happened. Then she found it, a torn page from Ayo's journal, hidden beneath the cushions in the hammock where they'd once kissed. One line, one final sentence, scrawled in frantic ink. She said if I couldn't unwrite you, she'd do it for me. Her blood ran cold. Was he talking about Amaka, or Tanya, or someone else entirely? That night the retreat generator failed again, and the property was plunged into darkness. Lanterns flickered like dying stars, and shadows seemed to crawl along the walls. Sandrine locked her door, a new fear clutching at her throat. She had been caught in a web of letters, and the spider had vanished. Somewhere in the night, she heard it, a soft knock. Not at her door, but on her window. A silhouette stood there, tall, familiar, but unmoving. When she flung the curtains open, no one was there. Only a piece of folded paper, taped to the glass. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The past doesn't die, it just changes handwriting. There was no signature. Sandrine did sleep. She lay stiff in bed, the cryptic note clutched in her palm, eyes locked on the moonlight creeping across the ceiling. The past doesn't die, it just changes handwriting. What the hell did that mean? Was Ayo still alive? Was Amaka watching her? Was Tanya lying in wait for revenge? Her thoughts spiraled until the first light of morning broke. That's when she saw the gardener, an old man, quiet, almost invisible to the other guests, digging near the spice garden. She watched from her balcony as he covered something with fresh dirt beneath a frangipani tree. But it wasn't planting season, and he wasn't carrying seeds. He glanced over his shoulder once, then slipped away like a ghost. Compelled, Sandrine snuck down to the garden in slippers and a linen robe. Her fingers sank into the damp earth. At first, just soil, then paper, damp, warped, but unmistakably a letter wrapped in plastic. She peeled it open. Her heart stopped. It was in Amaka's handwriting. You think you are different, Sandrine. You think you are the one he'll stay for, the one he won't write into destruction. I was her once. So was Tanya. So was a woman named Colette in Zanzibar. So was a man named Malik in Morocco. He seduces us with stories, and when the plot turns, he becomes the victim, the haunted genius. He doesn't love you. He loves the way you hurt. That's how he writes. and then a line scrawled in blood-red ink beneath Amaka's letter, as if someone had intercepted it later. They found Colette's body in the sea, and Malik was never seen again. Don't be the next page. Sandrine, end the story before it ends you. Her stomach turned violently. Was this a warning or a threat? She confronted the retreat owner that afternoon. "Where is Ayo?" she demanded. The woman, a middle-aged Grenadian with kind eyes and a clipboard, frowned. He checked in under the name Emmanuel Adebayo. No passport, paid cash, said he was here to finish a book. And Amaka? No record of her booking, but someone from room 12 checked out at 3 a.m. last night. Sandrine's breath caught. Did they live together? The woman nodded. Two figures on the beach, no bags, just walked into the fog like a dream. But dreams don't leave death threats in gardens. Back in her room, she found her own journal on the floor, pages rifled through, some torn out, and tucked in the back cover something she hadn't written. We don't bury our sins, we plant them, and sometimes they bloom. The next few days passed in surreal silence. No new letters, no Ayo, no Amaka, no Tanya. Then on the final morning, just before the boat came to collect the guests, Sandrine checked under her pillow out of habit. There was one last envelope. Inside, a photograph. Ayo, standing behind her at the writing hut. He was smiling at her, but it was the woman behind him that made her blood freeze. Amaka. She was holding a letter in one hand and a knife in the other, and written across the back of the photo, "The ending is already written. Now choose if you want to be read or remembered." The boat rocked gently as it carried Sandrine away from the retreat. Grenada's lush coastline faded behind her, veiled in morning mist. She should have felt relieved, safe, but all she felt was sick. The photo still sat in her lap, Amaka's face, the knife, that look, half love, half warning. She stared into the horizon, the wind catching her curls like restless fingers. Her thoughts were louder than the waves. Ayo was either dead or orchestrating something far more twisted. Back in St. George's, she checked into a small beachfront inn and immediately powered on her phone for the first time in weeks. Notifications flooded in like a digital avalanche. Missed calls, voicemails, messages from friends and colleagues. But what caught her breath was the news alert. Renowned Nigerian writer Emmanuel Ayo Adebayo missing. Foul play suspected. The article mentioned he was last seen on the shores of a Grenadian wellness retreat, that a guest reported hearing screams near the cliffs 2 nights before his disappearance, that police found fragments of a journal floating in the tide. Worse still, his real name wasn't Emmanuel Adebayo. His legal name was Joshua Aluko, and he had been previously investigated in Morocco in connection to the disappearance of a man named Malik, which had been ruled inconclusive. Sandrine felt her throat close. Malik, the name Amaka had warned her about, and now Ayo was gone. She returned to the retreat a week later, claiming she'd forgotten something, but really she needed answers. The grounds were eerily quiet. Most of the guests had left, and the police line wrapped around the writing hut. A yellow tarp covered something in the garden. She approached one of the officers, pretending to be calm. "What happened?" "We uncovered a body beneath the frangipani tree," he said. "The gardener tipped us off after a woman left in the middle of the night." "Was it him?" she asked, barely breathing. "We can't confirm yet, but there was a name carved into the journal we found with the remains." She didn't ask what the name was. She already knew. That night, unable to sleep, Sandrine wandered the retreat's abandoned library. She needed closure, or maybe permission to fall apart. Inside, dust lined the shelves and candle wax still clung to old ceramic holders. But one book lay open on the reading table, not part of the library collection, a leather-bound manuscript. Her fingers trembled as she turned the title page, Sunset Letters, a novel by Joshua Alu. But the final chapter chilled her marrow. She returned, alone, hoping he was buried, but fearing he was waiting. And when she finally read this page, she would realize she wasn't reading a story, she was living one. Just then, the library door creaked open. She spun around, but it was only wind, or maybe a whisper, because resting on the table beside her journal was a fresh piece of paper. Not aged, not damp, fresh, in Ayo's handwriting. "You were never my ending, Sandrine. You were my sequel." Sandrine left the manuscript behind, but the words followed her everywhere. She boarded the plane back to Port-au-Prince in a daze, clutching her journal like a lifeline. But even once she returned to the crowded streets and blaring horns of the Haitian capital, the island hadn't left her. Neither had Ayo. He was in the shadow of every man on the street, in the rustle of papers in the hospital's break room, in the phantom press of fingers against her spine when she undressed at night. And worse, the letters hadn't stopped. They started arriving at her apartment, folded perfectly, no return address, her name always written in that familiar looping scroll. But now, they weren't from Ayo, they were from her. At first, she thought it was a cruel prank. Maybe she'd lost a journal, maybe someone from the retreat was playing games. But the letters were dated and accurate. They referenced thoughts she'd only ever written in private, never spoken. One note read, "I miss him even now, even after everything. Am I broken or just human?" She had written that in her personal diary. It was never mailed, never shared. Another letter. "Maybe I liked the way he lied. Maybe I needed it. Maybe it let me believe I was finally the one worth the story." The letters grew darker, more confessional, more damning, and then one arrived with no words, just a photo of her sleeping in her bed, time-stamped from the night before. She ran to the police. They offered a polite shrug, citing a lack of threats. "Maybe it's a stalker," they said. "Change your locks. Get a camera." She did both, but the next morning, a letter was inside her apartment, taped to her bathroom mirror. You can't outrun a sequel, especially when you're the one writing it. The descent began slowly. She lost sleep, forgot to eat, missed rounds at the hospital. Her supervisor called her in for a performance review. citing erratic behavior and increasingly paranoid notes scribbled in the margins of her reports. "You okay?" her friend Josie asked. "You're not writing those letters to yourself, are you?" "I'm being watched," Sandrine snapped. "By a dead man?" Josie asked gently. Sandrine said nothing. Then came the final blow. At her doorstep one evening was a package wrapped in wax paper and bound with twine. Inside, a typewriter. Antique, familiar, IOS. And beneath it, a single sheet of parchment already rolled in. The message, "Let's finish this together." She didn't remember walking back to the airport, didn't remember booking the flight. Only that 3 days later, she stood once again at the edge of the Grenadian coast, barefoot, journal clutched to her chest, watching as the waves crashed beneath the cliffs. She returned to the retreat, abandoned now, shut down after the body was found. But Sandrine broke in easily. She found the writing hot, still smelling of candle wax and ash. She set the typewriter down, pulled out a blank page, and began to write. At first, her fingers trembled, then they flowed. She didn't know what she was saying, only that it came from somewhere outside of her. Maybe from him, maybe from the parts of herself that had unraveled beneath his pen. She wrote for hours, until the sun set, until the sky bled orange and bruised purple. And then she signed the last page. The end, only to see the ink rearrange itself, letter by letter, into the beginning. Sandrine awoke in the hammock behind the writing hut. Her fingers were stained with ink. The pages she typed fluttered in the early morning wind like white flags in surrender. She didn't remember falling asleep. She didn't remember writing the last letter, but there it was, tucked into her journal like a verdict. The title, Ayo's Confession. If you're reading this, Sandrine, then I've failed twice. Once at keeping you and once at letting you go. I never meant for this to happen. I meant to love you, not write you, not twist your pain into poetry, not let Amaka find out, and not let it end like this. I thought I could control the story, but you wrote your own ending. Her knees gave out. She sat in the dirt, letter trembling in her hands. If Ayo wrote this, he was alive or had been. But then she remembered something the officer said when they discovered the body. "We found fragments of a journal floating in the tide." A journal, not a body, no confirmed identity. What if he had faked his death? What if this had all been orchestrated? Back in town, Sandrine visited the local post office. She handed the clerk one of the haunting letters addressed to her. "Can you trace where this came from?" The woman glanced at it. "Funny, it was dropped here, but not mailed." "Dropped?" The clerk pointed at the security footage monitor. "People come in and leave stuff in the outgoing tray all the time. Some folks don't even need postage, they just want things found." "Can I see who brought this one?" The woman hesitated, then rewound the tape. Sandrine leaned in, and there, clear as day, was a figure wearing a hooded linen shirt, slender, graceful, familiar. Amaka. That night, Sandrine returned to the retreat one last time. This time not to escape, but to confront the ending she'd been avoiding. The garden still bore the shallow scar of the exhumed grave. The frangipani tree had begun to bloom again. Red petals fell like drops of blood onto the soil. She walked to the cliffs. The wind howled. Waves shattered against the rocks below like smashed porcelain. And there, silhouetted against the bruised sunset, stood a man, tall, familiar. "Ayo," she whispered. He turned. His eyes were sunken, tired, but unmistakably him. "No," he said quietly. "Not Ayo, not anymore." Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. "How?" "I faked it. The letter under your pillow. I knew you'd come looking. You always chase the final page. You let me believe you were dead. I had to." He stepped closer. "But I never stopped writing. I never stopped watching." That's when she saw it. The glint in his hand, a pen, not a knife, but it felt just as dangerous. "You made me crazy," she breathed. "You unmade me." "No, Sandrine," he said, voice low. "I wrote you." And then, a crack, a scream, a splash. No one ever confirmed what happened on that cliff. Some say she jumped. Some say he fell. Others say they both vanished into the sea, hands entwined. But weeks later, at a second-hand bookstore in Lagos, a manuscript appeared anonymously on the shelf. Title: Sunset Letters. Author: unknown. The dedication read, "For the girl who chased the ending, only to become it." And on the final page, in smudged ink, "If you're reading this, then you're part of the story now too." The end. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.